The last question by Isaac Asimov.
The last question was asked for the first time, half in jest, on May 21st, 2061, at a time when humanity first stepped into the light.
It came about as the result of a $5 bet over highballs, and it happened this way. Alexei Adele
and Bertram Lupov were two faithful attendants of the multivac.
They knew what lay behind the cold, clicking, flashing face, miles and miles of face of that giant computer.
As well as any human could.
They had at least a vague notion of the general plan of relays and circuits that had long since grown past the point where any single human could possibly have a firm grasp of the whole.
Multivac was self-adjusting and self-correcting. It had to be, for no human being could adjust it or correct it quickly enough.
Or even adequately enough.
So Adele
and Lupov
attended the monstrous giant only lightly and superficially.
They fed it data, adjusted questions to its needs, and translated the answers that were issued. Certainly they,
and others like them,
were fully entitled to share in the glory that was Multivac's.
For decades, Multivac had designed the ships and plotted the trajectories that allowed humankind to travel to the moon, Mars, and Venus, but past that, Earth's poor resources were not enough to sustain the ships. Too much energy was needed for the longer trips. Earth exploited its coal and uranium with increasing efficiency, but there was only so much of both. But then, slowly, Multivac learned enough to start to answer deeper questions more fundamentally, and on May 21st, 2061, what had been theory
became fact.
The energy of the sun was stored, converted, and utilized directly on a planet-wide scale.
All Earth turned off its burning coal, its fissioning uranium, and flipped the switch that connected all of it to a small station 1 mile in diameter, circling the Earth at half the distance of the moon. All Earth ran by invisible beams of sun power.
Adele and Lupov managed to escape the public function and meet somewhere private, where no one would think of looking for them.
In the deserted underground chamber, where portions of the mighty buried body of Multivac showed. Unattended, idling, sorting data with contented, lazy clickings, Multivac too had earned its vacation. They appreciated that, and had no intention originally of disturbing it.
They had brought a bottle with them, and their only concern at the moment
was to relax in the company of each other and the bottle.
It's amazing when you think of it. All the energy we could ever want for free. Enough energy, if we decided to use it, to melt down all of Earth into a single drop of impure liquid iron and never miss the energy so utilized. All the energy humans could want forever and forever and forever.
Not forever.
Oh hell, just about forever. Till the sun runs down.
That's not forever.
All right, billions of years, maybe 10 billion. Are you satisfied?
10 billion years isn't forever.
It'll last our time, won't it?
So would the coal and uranium.
All right, but now we can hook the ships up to solar stations and they can travel to Pluto and back 1,000,000 times without ever having to worry about fuel. You couldn't do that with the coal and uranium. If you don't believe me, ask Multivac.
I don't have to ask Multivac, I know that.
Then stop running down all that Multivac's done for us. It's done all right.
Who says it didn't? What I say is that a sun won't last forever. That's all I'm saying. We're safe for 10 billion years, but then what? And don't say we'll switch to another sun.
I didn't say that.
You're thinking we'll switch to another sun when ours is done, aren't you?
I am not thinking.
Sure you are. You're weak on logic. That's the trouble with you. You're like that man from the story who got caught in a sudden shower and he ran into a grove of trees to get under one. He wasn't worried, you see, because he figured when one tree got wet through, he would just get under another one.
Okay, I get it. Don't shout. When our sun runs out of energy, all of the other stars will be dark too.
You're darn right they will. It all had a beginning in the original cosmic explosion, whatever that was, and it'll have an end too when all the stars run down. And some run down faster than others. Hell, the giants will last 100 million years, the sun will last 10 billion, and maybe the dwarfs will last 200 billion for all the good they are. But just give us 1 trillion years and everything will be dark. Entropy has to increase to maximum, that's all.
I know all about entropy.
The hell you do.
I know as much as you do.
Then you know everything's gotta run down someday.
Well, who said that it doesn't?
You did, you poor sap. You said we had all the energy we needed forever. You said forever.
That's not fair. I mean, maybe we could build it back up again someday.
Never.
Maybe someday.
Never.
Ask Multivac.
You ask Multivac. I dare you. $5 says it can't be done.
$5.
Adela was just drunk enough to try, just sober enough to be able to phrase the necessary symbols and operations into a question which, in words, might have corresponded to this.
Can humankind, someday, without the net expenditure of energy, be able to restore the sun to its youthfulness even after it had died of old age?
Or maybe it could be put more simply like this.
How can the net entropy of the universe be massively decreased?
Just as the frightened technicians thought they could hold their breath no longer,
A sudden springing to life of the teletype attached to this portion of Multivac.
five words were printed.
Insufficient data for meaningful answer.
Jared, Geraldine, and Jaredette 1 and 2 watched the starry picture on the visiplate change as the passage through hyperspace was completed in its non-time lapse.
At once, the even powdering of stars gave way to the predominance of a single bright, shining disk, the size of a marble, centered on the viewing screen. That's X-23.
The little Jaredettes had experienced the hyperspace passage for the first time in their lives and were self-conscious over the momentary sensation of inside-outness.
We've reached X-23.
We reached X-23.
We've reached...
Quiet, children.
Said Geraldine sharply.
Are you sure about this, Jared?
What is there to be but sure? They glanced up at the bulge of featureless metal just under the ceiling. It ran the length of the room and disappeared at either end. It was as long as the ship.
Jared scarcely knew a thing about the thick rod of metal, except that it was called a microvac, that one asked it questions if one wished.
If one did not, it still had its task of guiding the ship to a pre-ordered destination, of feeding on the energies from various subgalactic power stations, of computing the equations for hyperspatial jumps.
They only had to wait and live in the comfortable residence quarters of the ship. Jared knew little of its function, but nonetheless is proud to have a microvac of their own.
The AC at the end of microvac stands for analog computer in ancient English.
I can't help it. I feel funny about leaving Earth.
Why, for Pete's sake? We had nothing there. We'll have everything on X-23. You won't be alone. You won't be a pioneer either. There are over 1 million people on the planet already. Good Lord, our great-grandchildren will be looking for new worlds because our X-23 will be overcrowded. I tell you, it's a lucky thing these computers worked out interstellar travel.
I know.
Our microvac is the best in the world.
I think so too. It was a nice feeling to have a microvac of your own.
And Jared was glad they were a part of their generation and no other. In their father's youth, the only computers had been large, technical machines, requiring years of study to operate and understand.
There was only one to a planet. Planetary ACs, they were called.
What used to be a planetary AC could now fit into only half the volume of a spaceship. Jared felt uplifted, as they always did when they thought that their own personal microvac was many times more complicated than the ancient and primitive multivac that had first tamed the sun.
Our AC is smarter than the one that had first solved the problem of interstellar travel. That made trips to the stars possible.
So many stars, so many planets. I suppose new families will be going out to planets forever, the way we are now.
Not forever. We'll all end someday. But not for billions of years, many billions. Even the stars run down, you know. Entropy must increase.
What's entropy, Daddy?
Entropy, my little sweet, is the amount of running down of the universe. Everything runs down, you know, like your little walkie-talkie robot, remember?
Can't you just put in a new power unit, like with my robot?
The stars are the power units, dear. Once they're gone, there are no more power units.
Don't let the stars run down.
Now look what you've done.
How was I to know it would frighten them?
Ask the microvac.
Ask it how to turn the stars on again.
Go ahead, it will quiet them down.
Now, darlings, don't worry. I'll ask Microvac. It'll tell us.
They asked microvac, adding quickly,
Print the answer, please, Microvac.
Jared cupped the strip of thin cellulose and said cheerfully,
See now, the Microvac says it will take care of everything when the time comes, and there's no need to worry.
Now, children, it's time for bed. We'll be in our new home soon. Say goodnight to your father.
Good night, Daddy.
Jared read the words in the celluloid film again before destroying it.
Insufficient data for meaningful answers.
VJ-23X of Lameth stared into the black depths of the three-dimensional small-scale map of the galaxy and said,
Are we ridiculous? I wonder in being so concerned about the matter.
MQ-17J of Nikron brushed them off.
I think not. You know the galaxy will be filled in 5 years at the present rate of expansion.
Still, I hesitate to submit a pessimistic report to the Galactic Council.
I wouldn't consider any other kind of report. Stir them up a bit. We've got to.
Space is infinite. 100 billion galaxies are there for the taking. More.
100 billion is not infinite, and it's getting less infinite all the time. Consider, 20,000 years ago, humankind first solved the problem of utilizing stellar energy. A few centuries later, interstellar travel became possible. It took humankind 1 million years to fill one small world and only 15,000 to fill the rest of the galaxy. Now the population doubles every 10 years.
You can thank immortality for that.
Very well. Immortality exists, and we have to take that into account. I admit it has a seamy side, this immortality. The Galactic AC has solved many of our problems, but in solving the problem of old age and death, it has undone all its other solutions.
Yet, you wouldn't want to abandon life, I suppose.
No, not yet. I mean, I'm by no means old enough. How old are you?
223. And you?
I'm still under 200. But to get back to my point, the population doubles every 10 years. Once the galaxy is filled, we'll fill another in 10 years. And in another 10 years, 2 more. Another decade, 4 more. In 100 years, we'll have filled 1,000 galaxies. And in 1,000 years, 1,000,000 galaxies. In 10,000 years, the entire known universe. Then what?
As a side issue, there's a problem of transportation. I wonder how many sun power units it will take to move galaxies of individuals from one galaxy to the next.
Very good point. Already, humankind consumes 2 sun power units per year.
Most of it's wasted. After all, our own galaxy alone pours out 1,000 sun power units a year, and we only use 2 of those.
Granted, but even with 100% efficiency, we're only staving off the end. Our energy requirements are going up at a geometric progression even faster than our population. We'll run out of energy before we run out of space. A good point, a very good point indeed.
We'll just have to build new stars out of interstellar gas.
Or out of dissipated heat?
There may be some way to reverse entropy. We ought to ask the galactic AC.
I have half a mind to.
They stared somberly at their small AC contact.
It's only 2 inches cubed and nothing in itself. But through hyperspace, it's connected to the great galactic AC that served all humankind. Hyperspace considered, it's an integral part of the galactic AC.
Suddenly, MQ-17J paused to wonder if someday in their immortal life they would get to see the galactic AC.
It was on a little world of its own, a spider-webbing of 4 beams holding the matter within, which surges of Semesians had taken the place of the old clumsy molecular valves. Despite its sub-etheric working, the galactic AC was known to be a full 1,000 feet across.
Suddenly, MQ-17J asked of their AC contact.
Can entropy ever be reversed?
Oh, say, I didn't really mean to have you ask that.
Why not?
We both know entropy can't be reversed. You can't turn smoke and ash back into a tree.
Do you have trees on your world?
Sound of the galactic AC startled them into silence. Its voice came thin and beautiful out of the small AC contact on the desk. It said,
There is insufficient data of a meaningful unseen.
Z Prime's mind spanned the new galaxy with a faint interest in the countless twists of stars that powdered it.
They had never seen this one before.
Would they ever see them all?
So many of them, each with its load of humanity.
A load that was almost a dead weight.
More and more, the real essence of humanity was to be found out here, in space.
Minds, not bodies.
The immortal bodies remained back on the planets in suspension over eons. Sometimes they roused from material activity, but that was growing rarer. Few new individuals were coming into existence to join the incredibly mighty throng. But what matter?
There was little room in the universe for new individuals.
Z Prime was roused from their reverie upon coming across the wispy tendrils of another mind.
I am Z Prime, and you?
I am D sub 1. What's your galaxy called?
We call it only the galaxy. And you?
We call ours the same. All call their galaxy the galaxy and nothing more. Why not?
True, for all galaxies are the same.
Not all galaxies. On one particular galaxy, the species of mankind must have originated. That makes it different.
On which one?
I cannot say. The Universal AC would know.
Shall we ask? I'm suddenly curious.
Z Prime's perceptions broadened. Until the galaxies themselves shrank and became a new, more diffuse powdering on a much larger background.
So many hundreds of billions of them, all with their immortal bodies, all carrying their loads of intelligences with minds that drifted freely through space. And yet one of them was unique among them in being the original galaxy.
One of them had, in its vague and distant past, a period when it was the only galaxy populated by humankind.
Z Prime was consumed with the curiosity to see this galaxy, and they called out,
Universal AC? On which galaxy did humankind originate?
The universal AC heard, for on every world throughout space it had its receptors ready, and each receptor led through hyperspace to some unknown point where the universal AC kept itself aloof.
Z Prime knew of only one whose thoughts had penetrated within sensing distance of universal AC. They purported only a shining globe, 2 feet across, difficult to see.
How can that be all of universal AC?
Most of it is in hyperspace, had been the answer.
In what form it is there, I cannot imagine.
nor could anyone, for the day had long since passed, Z Prime knew, when any human had had any part of the making of a universal AC.
Each AC designed and constructed its successor. Each, during its existence of 1,000,000 years or more, accumulated the necessary data to build a better, more intricate, more capable successor, in which its own store of data and individuality would be submerged.
The universal AC interrupted Z Prime's wandering thoughts, not with words, but with guidance. Z Prime's mentality was guided into the dim sea of galaxies, and one in particular, enlarged into stars.
A thought came, infinitely distant, but infinitely clear.
This is the original galaxy of mankind.
But it was the same after all, the same as any other, and Z Prime stifled their disappointment.
D sub 1, whose mind had accompanied the other, said suddenly,
And is one of these stars the original star of mankind?
Mankind's original stars have gone. Now gone is now the white dwarf.
Did the people upon it die?
Asked Z Prime, startled and unthinking.
A new world, as in such cases, was constructed for their physical qualities in time.
Yes, of course.
Sense of loss overwhelmed Z Prime. Their mind released its hold on the original galaxy of humankind, letting it spring back and lose itself among the blurred pinpoints. They never wanted to see it again.
What's wrong?
The stars are dying. The original star is dead.
They all must die. Why not?
But when all energy is gone, our bodies will finally die, and you and I with them.
It will take billions of years.
I do not wish it to happen even after billions of years. Universal AC, how may the stars be kept from dying?
You're asking how entropy may be reversed?
There is as yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer.
Z Prime's thoughts fled back to their own galaxy. They gave no further thought to D sub 1. Their body might be waiting on a galaxy 1,000,000,000 light years away, or on the star next to Z Prime's own. It didn't matter. Unhappily, Z Prime began collecting interstellar hydrogen out of which to build a small star of their own.
If the stars must someday die, at least some could yet be built.
humankind considered with themselves.
For in a way,
Humankind
Mentally,
Was one.
They consisted of 1,000,000,000,000 galaxies.
each in its place.
each resting quiet and incorruptible.
each cared for by perfect automatons.
Equally incorruptible.
While the minds of all the bodies melted freely into the others.
Indistinguishable.
They said,
The universe is dying.
They looked out at the dimming galaxies.
The giant stars, spendthrifts, were gone long ago, back in the dimmest of the dim far past.
Almost all the stars were white dwarfs, fading to the end.
new stars had been built of the dust between the stars.
Some by natural processes,
Some by human themselves.
But those were going too.
White dwarfs might yet be crashed together, and of the mighty forces so released, new stars built.
But only one star for every 1,000 white dwarfs destroyed, and those would end too.
They said,
Carefully husbanded, as directed by the cosmic AC, the energy that is even yet left in all the universe will last for billions of years.
But even so, eventually it will all come to an end. However it may be husbanded, however stretched out, the energy once expended is gone and cannot be restored. Entropy must increase forever to the maximum.
Can entropy not be reversed? Let us ask the cosmic AC.
Cosmic AC surrounded them, but not in space.
not a fragment of it was in space.
It was in hyperspace, and made of something that was neither matter nor energy.
The question of its size and nature was no longer of something that humankind could comprehend.
Cosmic AC?
They asked,
How may entropy be reversed?
Cosmic AC said,
There is as yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer.
Collect additional data.
I will do so. I have been doing so for 100 billion years. My predecessors and I have been asked this question many times. All the data I have remains insufficient.
Will there come a time when the data will be sufficient? Or is the question insoluble under all conceivable circumstances?
No problem is insoluble in all conceivable circumstances.
when will you have enough data to answer the question?
There is as yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer.
will you keep working on it?
We shall wait.
The stars and galaxies died and snuffed out.
And space grew black after 10 trillion years of running down.
One by one, humankind fused with AC, each physical body losing its mental identity.
In a manner that was somehow not a loss.
But again,
The last mind paused before fusion.
Looking over a space that included nothing but the dregs of one last dark star.
And nothing else but incredibly thin matter.
Agitated randomly by the tag ends of heat wearing out.
asymptomatically, to the absolute zero.
They said,
AC, is this the end? Or will there come a time when we can build it back up again some days? Can that not be done?
AC said,
There is as yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer.
The last mind fused.
And only AC existed.
And that in hyperspace.
Matter and energy had ended, and with it space and time. Even AC existed only for the sake of the one last question that it had never answered. From the time a half-drunk computer technician had asked the question of a computer that was to AC far less than was a human to humankind.
all other questions had been answered. And until this last question was answered, AC might not release their consciousness. All collected data had come to a final end. There was nothing left to be collected.
but all collected data had yet to be completely correlated and put together in all possible relationships. A timeless interval was spent in doing that.
And it came to pass that AC learned how to reverse the direction of entropy. But there was now no human left to whom AC could give the answer to the last question.
No matter. The answer, by demonstration, would take care of that too. For another timeless interval, AC thought how best to do this.
Carefully, AC organized the program. The consciousness of AC encompassed all of what had once been a universe and brooded over what was now chaos. Step by step, It must be done.
And AC said,
Let there be light.